Welcome to episode 239 of the Leadership Playbook podcast with your host, yours truly, JC Hurtado-Prater. And what I want to do again today, we did this with the last episode, is to go back into the virtual classroom. Again, I've shared with you that I teach and I love my job at Loma, Nazarene University, the Fermanian School of Business there. And so I do a lot of podcasts for my students. And every now and then, if I do one that I think would resonate with us, then I want to put it on this podcast. So I want to dive back in it's really a book that we're looking at. It's the book by John Maxwell, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. And last week we were in chapters 1 and 2, where we talked about the idea that influence grows from connection. Connection thrives when you focus on others instead of yourself. And intentionality is the bridge between communication and meaningful relationships. These foundational insights set the stage for what we're going to explore today. Again, back to the virtual classroom, and we're going to look at chapters 3 and 4 today, where Maxwell reveals how true connection goes beyond words and requires deliberate energy. We'll unpack practical lessons on nonverbal communication, the power of enthusiasm, and why authenticity is the cornerstone of trust. Whether you're leading a team, mentoring others, or building relationships in your personal life, these insights will help you become a more effective connector. Let's dive in. Well, before we dive into the podcast today, going to the virtual classroom, I want to read a quick ad from my company that sponsors this podcast. At Bluestone Corporate Solutions, we're committed to advancing people and accelerating growth. And what does that mean, you may ask? Advancing people means equipping your team members, managers, and leaders with the tools, skills, and mindsets they need to grow, thrive, and reach their full potential. Accelerating growth means translating that personal and professional development into real, measurable results for your organization, boosting performance, engagement, and success. We help organizations develop high-performing people, leaders, and teams through learning experiences that empower the excellence, intelligence, and talent within your workforce. We do that through dynamic in-person and virtual training sessions, customized programs tailored to your needs. When your people succeed, your organization thrives. So if this sounds like something that you would need, your organization needs, please contact me directly, JC Hurtado-Prater. You can email me at jc@bluestone.consulting, jc@bluestone.consulting, and let's partner together to build a culture of excellence and success for you and your team. Now let's get back to the podcast. Lesson number 1, connection goes beyond words. Connection goes beyond words. Maxwell's chapter 3 reveals an important truth. Communication is far more important than the words that we speak. Research shows that in face-to-face communication, words account for only 7% of the message. The tone accounts for 38%, and body language makes up for a staggering 55%. Now, I'm trying to do the math on this. 55 plus 38, let's see, 55 plus 30 is 85 plus 8 is what? So 93% of the message, okay, is body language and tone. That's what we have to understand. When we're connecting with people, it's not just the words, it's the body language and it's the tone. This means that how you say something often matters more than what you say, okay? So in the book, Maxwell talks about this. To connect effectively, Maxwell outlines 4 levels of connection for us. And so number 1 is this: visual connection. Visual connection. People believe what they see before they believe what they hear. This means that your appearance, facial expressions, and body language must align with your message. Are you maintaining eye contact? And that is key. If you're talking to a group of people or you're talking one on one, are you maintaining eye contact? Are your gestures reinforcing your words? Like right now, I'm gesturing, right? If I was saying, are your gestures reinforcing your words, and my arms are going all over, my gestures aren't matching, right? The gestures have to match the words. For example, if you're expressing enthusiasm, but your posture is slouched, your audience will sense a disconnect, right, between our words and kind of what our bodies are presenting. Intellectual connection. Clarity is key. Simplify complex ideas and make them relatable. Instead of overwhelming people with jargon, focus on making your message easy to understand. For instance, a great leader might explain a technical concept with a metaphor or story that resonates with their audience's experiences. Stories are key, right? You want to connect with an audience, especially if you're speaking in front of a group of people, bring it back to a story. People may not remember the data, they may not remember the facts that you share. It's much tougher for people to forget a story. Number three, emotional connection. Okay. People may forget what you say, but they will never forget how you make them feel. That is key. That is key. And I found in a lot of the corporate training that I do, sometimes the most important thing that I can bring to the table, just making people feel heard and making people feel valued. Okay. If you can establish that emotional connection, oftentimes that's going to overpower almost anything that you say. And how that works often is that if you're getting ready to talk to a group of people and maybe you're having an off day, maybe the presentation doesn't go as well as you think, you missed a few points. If the emotional connection is there, they will forgive almost anything. That emotional connection is key. And then number four, verbal connection. While words make up a small portion of the overall message, they still matter. Be thoughtful about your language. Avoid using phrases that exclude or alienate other people, and strive for clarity and inclusivity. I got to tell you a quick story here. Maybe I've already shared this story. I've shared it so much, but this is a great story. I don't think I've shared it in this class. We talk about this idea of connection, the verbal connection, right? And not using phrases that exclude or alienate other people. So I get asked to go to Denver, Colorado, and be a part of a conference there and do some training. And so I fly in, I get to the hotel. It's a much bigger room than I thought it was going to be. A lot more people in the presentation. Somehow I thought it was going to be 20 people. I walk in, there's about 125 people, which isn't a large room, but it's for training purposes, that's a pretty significant room. And so I walk in, and this is my first time to Denver. Okay. Okay. Let me be careful. But it's not my first time to Denver. It's my first time to Denver to train. Okay. And so I'm trying to figure out a way to connect with them. And so I don't know if any of you, and I probably should be careful saying this. It's probably not the best example for a Nazarene university, but I got to share it with you. Back when I was in the military, okay, I certainly, and if you've been in the military, you understand this, certainly went out with my friends and we had drinks and we drank, different kinds of beer. And one of the kind of beers that you would drink would be Coors Light. Okay. Now, you may disagree with me, but I think Coors Light is absolutely the worst ever beer ever made in the entire United States, maybe in the entire world. It it tastes like someone spit in water and then canned it up or put it in a bunch of bottles and then sold it and let that spit ferment over. There's just so much I could say about it. Anyway, I just don't think it's good. I'm going to Colorado. Now, in Colorado, if you know anything about Colorado, Colorado is the home of Coors beer. It's something it's something now I thought everyone felt the way that I did. So I fly in, I get in front of people, and the first thing I say in front of this group of people is I get up and I say, "Hey, it's great to be in Colorado today." And I forget what I said, but I said something about how something along the lines about how bad Coors Light beer is. Okay, and I'm thinking everyone's going to laugh because that's funny because it's not good, and you could hear a pin drop. as I got done saying it. And I learned really quickly that number one, humor is not my strong suit, so I stay away from humor. That it's just not something that I should be doing. But number two, I learned what I said, it alienated that entire crowd. That state and those people are very proud of Coors Light. They're very proud of the Coors family. They're very proud of that brand there in Colorado. And so I learned a huge lesson. And I tell the story all the time about number one, watch your humor. If you don't really know the crowd, I always, I've learned to stay away from humor, especially if it's my first time in front of a room. I'm not good at humor anyway. I'm not a comedian. It's not my skill. So I've learned to stay away. But I've also learned, don't say anything that's going to be divisive. Don't talk about anything that you don't like, right? That should not be the first part of the conversation. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. That did not create a connection. Now I'm proud to say I'm pro enough that I was able to quickly realize that. And over the next 4 hours, it was a 4 hour training, be able to kind of gain back the trust. But I sure did not start. Boy, my first 5 minutes in front of a group of 125 people in Denver, Colorado, boy, was not the way to get it started. So anyway, that's that's connection there. Okay, it gives a tip here when you're thinking about connection and going beyond words. One of the tips, and this is kind of a practical tip, practice recording yourself in a conversation or a presentation. Watch the playback to assess whether your nonverbal cues and tone align with your intended message. This self-awareness is critical for improvement. So again, when you're connecting with other people, it's really important that you understand what you're bringing to the table. So it might be important for you to film a Zoom, right? Where maybe you're having a conversation with someone and then watch it back and see how you're reacting to them, how you're showing up to the conversation. It might be important to invite somebody over and ask if you can film the conversation, just so you can see how you're approaching that passion, that enthusiasm is, and what we're going to talk about here in a second, and that presence. All of this is really key. The eye contact. All of this is really key if you're going to make a connection with the people. And again, if this is a group, or if this is one person you're talking to, the principles still apply. Okay, so that's lesson number one. Okay, which was again, connection goes beyond words. Lesson number two from the book, energy fuels connection. In chapter 4, Maxwell explains that connecting with others requires energy, and not just physical energy, but emotional and mental energy as well. It's easy to fall into the trap of passive communication, especially in our fast-paced world, but genuine connection demands presence and effort. Maxwell highlights 3 ways to bring energy to your interactions. Number 1, and this is key right here, be fully present, no matter who you're with. Okay, we've all been in conversations where maybe it's some kind of event that you go to and you're talking with someone and they're talking to you, but you can tell that they're looking over your shoulder to see who's number one, the next person they're going to talk to, or number two, is there someone more important that they should be talking to other than you? This is not what you want to bring to a conversation. Even if you see someone in the room that is so important, make sure that you are being present with the person in front. It doesn't mean you have to talk to that person for an entire 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is. You can talk to them for 3 minutes, but give them your full presence for that 3 minutes. And here's what I find. It's just an important practice for you to have. People see it, people recognize it. You grow when you're present with the person in front of you. You get to know something, you get to learn. Yesterday after class, with one of the in-person classes that I was teaching, I had a young lady stop by afterwards and she wanted to talk. And I got to be honest with you, she's more quiet in the class, so I didn't really, recognize her. And this is a class filled with a lot of strong personalities, which is great, and I love that. So my first instinct was, I've got to go. I've got to get back. I've got a couple things I have to do, and then I got to get on the road to pick up my daughter. And I realized what I try to teach everyone else. And so I was present with her. And I learned a lot. Number one, she's a softball player. And so she gave me tips. My youngest daughter's a softball player. And so I asked her, hey, what tips do you have for her? And then what tips do you have for me as a dad about how I show up with her? And I learned a lot in that 4 4 to 5 minute conversation, brief conversation. I also learned about her that her boyfriend is one of the firefighters out here in San Diego. And as I'm recording this, it feels like all of Southern California is on fire right now. And so I was able to learn, a little bit about that and kind of the stresses that they go through. And so just by being fully present for that 4 to 5 minutes and forgetting about the fact that I need to get going, I learned something in that conversation. I want you to have the same experience. Okay. Be fully present. Give them your undivided attention. Put your phone away. Maintain eye contact. Actively listen. Presence. Okay, your presence is one of the most powerful ways to show someone that they matter. Number two, under lesson number two, which is energy fuels connection. Lesson or 3 ways. Okay, so here's the second way: demonstrate enthusiasm. Okay, when you're talking, especially about something that you're passionate about, demonstrate that enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is contagious. It kind of roll through a room quickly. So make sure you're enthusiastic about what you're talking about. Number three, okay, 3 ways to bring energy to your interactions. Take initiative. Don't wait. This is one that many of you probably struggle with. Don't wait for others to reach out or engage. Be the one to start the conversation or follow up. That means even if you go to an event, okay, don't be the one sitting off in the corner waiting for other people to come to you. Okay. Now you can, and that may work. Some extroverted person might come and find you, but just walk up. And again, one of the easiest things that you can do is just shake somebody's hand. Well, let's say you're at an event together. You don't know hardly anybody there. But you find someone who's kind of standing by themselves. Just go up and say, "Hey, my name's JC. Tell me about yourself. Tell me what you do." And that's all you have to, and then just let the other person talk. We've talked about that already, but take the initiative. Don't sit back and wait for other people to come to you. So here's a challenge for you. Identify a situation where you've been disengaged or passive in communication this week. Okay. This week, after you listen to this podcast, bring renewed energy to that interaction. Okay. Whether it's a team meeting or family dinner, commit to being fully present and fully engaged in that conversation and watch what happens. You will learn more than you can possibly imagine. Lesson number 3, authenticity creates trust. And I have found this time and time and time and time again in my life. Authenticity creates trust. Both chapters emphasize, so that's chapters 3 and 4 that we're looking at, that connection relies on authenticity. People are drawn to those who are genuine and real. Okay. John Maxwell argues that attempting to project an image of perfection or superiority creates a barrier to connection. And I see, especially young communicators and young leaders, I see them try to do this time and time again. They get in front of a room and they're trying to prove themselves to everyone and try to prove how great they are, as opposed to showing the authentic side to them. Okay, showing the authentic side. I've seen it hurt people in job interviews. They get up in front of a room of people and they're trying to impress everyone in the room as opposed to just being themselves, and it hurts them inside of a job interview. Look, if you bring your authentic self and the person doesn't like you, that person's not for you anyway. Okay. If you bring your authentic self and that organization doesn't hire you, that's not the organization for you anyway. Don't ever be fake to try to get a job or try to befriend somebody who doesn't want to befriend with you, or connect with someone who doesn't want to connect with you. Just be your authentic self and the right people will come to you. Okay. So here are 3 ways to demonstrate authenticity. Number 1, admit your mistakes. Admit your mistakes. People respect honesty. When you own up to your errors, it shows humility and builds trust. For instance, a leader who acknowledges a poor decision and shares the lessons that they've learned is far more relatable than ones who deflect blame. Talk about, well, the reason why this happened was because of what other people did. Admit your mistake. This is something that I do quite often when I'm, giving trainings. Leadership trainings, is I will talk about the failures that I've had in leadership. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about leadership development, because I've done the mistakes. I've lived the mistakes. And I have found that the more I share those with people openly and honestly, the more they listen. Okay. I just can't stress it enough. I've given a training one time where I was so uncomfortable sharing some of the stories I shared because they were very personal to me, but they needed to be shared in that training. And I'll never forget it. And I'm not saying this to, make you think that I'm, great or anything like that. But I'll never forget feeling, I felt very insecure doing that, if I'm honest with you. And I felt like, man, this hurts to be this honest in this training. And I'll never forget afterwards the response that came from that group of people. And three people ended up coming up afterwards and saying that that was one of the best trainings that they've been to. And they said they really appreciated the stories. And I'll never forget driving away that night and just, recognizing that yes, it's painful for us, those of us who are leaders or speakers, because that means we've got to bare our soul and do something that maybe the person and sitting in front of us is not willing to do with us. But I promise you, when you do that, it's going to create trust and it's going to create connection with the other person. When you do, the worst thing you can do is get up in front of a room of people or with anyone one on one is talk about how great you are. That's the nobody relates to that. What everyone can relate to are flaws, even if they don't want to admit it, even if they don't want to talk about it. Everyone can relate to being a flawed human being because guess what? All of us as human beings are flawed. So admit your mistakes, talk about those. Okay. Number two, in this lesson. Number two, share personal stories. I've already kind of talked about that. Vulnerability fosters intimacy. By sharing your challenges, your failures, your triumphs, you allow others to see your humanity. For example, if you're mentoring someone, sharing a story about a time you struggled can make your advice more impactful. People want to know that you have had the same struggle. Now that doesn't mean make your speeches or make your conversations with other people therapy. That's not what I'm talking about. I've seen that done before. Where people get up and they start talking and they start throwing up and vomiting all over the room, and it's like their therapy, and they're crying by the end of it, and everyone else is sitting. Wait a minute, what just happened here, right? Well, we don't need all of your problems in addition to ours. That's not what I'm talking about. Talk about the stuff that you've healed from. Right. So that when you're saying it, it's not coming out of a position of neediness. That's one of the worst ways to ever try to connect with a group of people, out of your own neediness and your own pain and your own vulnerability. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the stuff that you've overcome and the stuff that you have that you have learned from, the stuff that you have healed from. Talk about that. Okay. Because you're not in a position anymore of sharing it to gain healing from the room. You're now sharing it to allow healing to take place in other people, or realizations or transformations in other people. You're using your story as an act of service to other people. That's what I'm talking about right there. Okay. So share your personal stories, and then number three, align actions with words. Consistency, and this is something I'll talk a lot about. Consistency is key. Consistency is key to building trust. If you say you value teamwork but consistently prioritize individual achievement, your credibility will suffer. Authenticity means ensuring your behavior matches your stated values. Now, as I just shared, authenticity doesn't mean oversharing or being unfiltered. That is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for people to lose trust in you. Okay. There's a point where you share, and I've learned this because I've been doing this long enough, and there have been times that I've overshared, and I can sense it right away where I lose the room, because then they're saying, okay, now you just went from, wow, you're a flawed human, to now you're just jacked up. Okay. And now we're all sitting here wondering, why are we listening to this jacked up person talking to us? So I've made that mistake before and there's a line. Okay. And the only way you're going to figure that out is just by experimenting. You may cross that line sometime and overshare. And then you may have to say, and I'll even say that sometimes if I do it, now I'm more of a pro at it. And so I can call it out in front of the room and say, wow, I just shared way too much, didn't I? I'll say, hey, that was too much information. My apologies, everyone. That just moved from, a lesson into therapy. So let's pull it back into our training today. And then everybody kind of laughs about it, and then you can move forward, right? They've seen that you recognized you overshared, you stepped over a little bit. Now you can add humor to it, and you can pull it back. But sometimes that just takes time, to be able to understand that. So don't overshare, don't be unfiltered, but it's about showing up as your true self with the focus on building trust and connection, and most importantly, adding value to other people. Okay. So to recap, the top lessons from chapter 3 and chapter 4, lesson number 1, connection goes beyond words. Focus on visual, intellectual, emotional, and verbal alignment. Lesson number 2, Energy fuels connection. Be present, show enthusiasm, take initiative to build stronger relationships. And lesson number 3, authenticity creates trust. Own your mistakes, share your personal stories, ensure actions align with your values. These lessons remind us that effective communication isn't just about what we say, but how we show up in our interactions. And as you go about your week, I want to challenge you, okay? Challenge yourself to apply these principles in your conversations and relationships. I hope not only that this has been good for you as you're learning about greater connection, but I hope it adds value to you and that you can put some of the stuff that we're learning in these podcasts, that you can put it to work right now, today, in your own life. Okay? Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.